In addition to using variables to get our shapes to move across the screen in either direction to animate, you could also animate by growing. So by getting the width or the height or both to move. So let's take an example of a circle and let's make the circle grow. So the first question is you have to think, we plot this circle out. I copy this code and I'd like you to follow along, so please do the same thing. Copy the code, paste it into a new sketch. And we look at this and we think, well, which coordinate is going to have to become a variable? It's going to vary. Is it the x, is it the y, or is it the width and the height? And what I said I want is for it to grow. I want the width and the height to grow. So that means this coordinate here would become the variable. All right, well, what shall I call this variable? When I wanted to substitute x, the x coordinate, I called that x. When I wanted to substitute the y coordinate, I called it y. This one clearly should be Bob's hot dog stand. Or, and you can really call it whatever you want, I call it WH for width and height. So I'm going to declare this as an integer because it is going to equal 20, which is a whole number. Or sorry, I'm initializing this as an integer. And I'm going to call it WH, and I'm going to declare it, I declare u equal 20. All right, so that is step 1 and 2 together. And now step 3, I can hear you chanting it, is use the variable. Okay, let's see what we have. Let's just make sure everything looks right. I always like to do that. Okay, and so now what was step 4? Oh, if only I could hear you shouting. Increase the variable. Yes, that is right. WH equals itself, WH plus, let's just try 5, for example, and see what we have. All right, cool. So I'd like you to take a minute and try increasing this by different amounts. So what does it look like if it's very small or if it's very large? All right, so pause this and play with that for a minute. All right, so I want to make sure that you do understand these numbers that we increase or we add to or subtract from our variable when we write the x equals x plus 10, for example. So when the variable is being used for an x or a y coordinate, like here, circle, when we have a variable in the x, the number that you add or subtract from your variable, so the number in this little equation controls the speed. The higher the number is, the faster it jumps across the screen. The smaller the number is, it'll go slower. When you are using the variable in the place of something that represents a width or a height, this number that you add in that little equation, for example, WH equals WH plus 5, will draw smaller steps, so more frequently, and it'll give you more circles. So if I increase it by 5, then I get more and more and more of these. They're closer together. Because if WH started at 50, so that's my width and my height, and then it becomes 55, then it becomes 60, and then 65, and then 70, and 75, and so on and so forth. So those numbers are a lot closer. Versus if my width and my height starts at 50, right, that's my first one, and then I keep adding 50 to it, so my next one's at 100, next one's at 150, next one's at 200, and so on and so forth. So I have fewer of the shapes simply because they are having bigger jumps. Okay, so that's it for this video. If you want, you can show me what you've been working on, but I really just want you to take a minute and look over your sketches and make sure that you understand all 4 steps in this process of getting your shapes to animate, whether it's animating across the screen or it's animating by getting larger.